Hi there, my name is Gregory Payne and I'm the project manager for Gastank. I'd like to begin by taking this opportunity to firstly welcome and thank you for taking the time to watch this video presentation. In the next 20 minutes or so, the Gastank team will take you through the journey we have taken to get to this point, which is in effect the completion of the first iteration of the Gastank product. We will delve a little bit deeper into a number of areas that will give you the viewer a comprehensive understanding of how we completed this iteration. However, before we go any further, I'd like to introduce you to the remaining member of the Gastank team, Ben Murphy, as you will be meeting Ben throughout the course of this presentation.
Thanks, Greg. My name is Ben Murphy and I'm the designer on the Gastank team. Some of the work I've done on the product up to this point includes the design of the logo, the development of the brand and the guidelines associated with it. The major body of work I've done in the last while was the creation of the app visuals and how they progressed into the final prototype. Some of what I'll walk you through today is the value proposition, the initial business model canvas, my design decisions and how they became the final designs, and then at the end I'll walk you through a product prototype. I'll hand you back to Greg.
Thank you, Ben. So, as mentioned previously, my role is project manager for Gastank. My contributions included concept creation and research and development. Additionally, I worked on a number of elements that I will present on here, and they include business model formulation, customer validation, and product development. So now that we've got the introductions out of the way, let's begin by looking at value proposition, which Ben will bring us through.
The priority of every youth sport coach should be to ensure the health and safety of every young athlete in their care. Unfortunately, due to lack of experience and/or coach education, a high proportion of youth sport coaches engage in overzealous practice demands. This approach can have detrimental effects on a young athlete's mind and body during very sensitive growth and developmental stages and lead to a phenomenon known as overtraining.
The most common symptoms associated with overtraining are typically characterized by a decrease in performance, chronic muscle or joint pain, injury, lack of enthusiasm about practice, and personality changes. To put in context how serious this issue is, the American Coaching Academy warned that untrained volunteer coaches are putting young athletes at risk in alarming numbers. With that in mind, what is a possible solution? Well, it has been documented in scientific literature that the acquisition of specific subjective measures proves an effective means of monitoring the physical and mental demands placed on athletes. The two most commonly used measures are readiness to train, that is, how to determine what the athlete can physically and mentally cope with, as well as their perceived rate of exertion, that is, how hard they felt their practice sessions or games were. The acquisition and interpretation of such data can be used for the purposes of generating appropriate preventive and intervention strategies when necessary. It was from these findings the idea for Gastank was conceived. Gastank is a software as a service product aimed at youth sports coaches. The purpose of the product is to streamline the acquisition of subjective data in the youth athletic setting in order to support coaches in their effort to avoid the pitfalls of overtraining. To make it simpler to understand, you can compare a Gastank to that of a Formula 1 mechanic. The mechanic determines how many laps the car can handle, given the amount of fuel available or the condition of the tyres. They won't push the car beyond the limits of what it's capable of, as this could be detrimental to the performance and safety. Gastank is based on the same principle. It ultimately facilitates coaches in determining what their athletes should or should not be exposed to in terms of training and game demands. In essence, you could say Gastank is the Formula 1 mechanic for youth athletic performance. Next, we will look at the initial business model that we conceived in the early stages of product development. As a team, we made the decision to utilize the business model canvas so as to identify initial key assumptions. Here I will briefly review each section based on early development of the minimum viable product. For key partners, we identified the app and Google Play Store. We also proposed building strong relationships with coaches in order to expand our network and bring them on board as beta testers. For key activities, we placed a strong emphasis on marketing and communication, as well as training and education for prospective users. Key resources focused on physical resources necessary to use the product effectively, as well as intellectual, human, and financial resources essential to product success. In terms of value proposition, the primary focus is to streamline the ability to individualize training and performance demands according to each athlete's specific needs. Customer relationships revolved around the importance of customer acquisition and retention. For channels, we looked at promotion locally initially before addressing expansion into other markets, while the customer segments identifies amateur sports coaches who work with young athletes from 13 years of age upwards and who are based worldwide, particularly in Europe, North America, Australia and New Zealand. The initial cost structure will be based on lean startup methodology, subsequently progressing to a more value-based structure once traction in the market has been achieved. And finally, revenue streams would look to incorporate a low-cost monthly subscription and possible consideration of AdWords and a YouTube channel. Now, having looked at the initial business model, I will hand you back over to Greg to discuss product validation.
As Ben alluded to, we formed hypotheses for the product, and this was based on the initial business model canvases you've just seen. However, as research and development accumulated, it became apparent that certain components required further consideration. One other key factor was that shortly prior to the creation of the initial business model canvas, we had decided to pivot. Initially, the product was aimed at all age groups, but research had shown that the youth demographic was not specifically catered for. So we made the decision to focus specifically on that niche. Now that was based on two very important factors. The first being the fact that all our early research had indicated that the youth demographic had a big problem with overtraining. And secondly, there were a number of competitors in the marketplace that offered similar products, but nothing that really distinguished themselves from each other. So that's why we focused on a youth athletic population. However, now that we'd committed to that decision, we really needed further evidence to support the fact that that was a good decision. The question we asked was, is overtraining as big a problem in young athletes as it initially appears? And is Gastank a viable solution? Further research suggested that the answer was yes. We sourced peer-reviewed literature from leading authorities on the subject, as well as collecting insights from industry leaders. Some of the most vocal commentators on the repercussions arising from overtraining in young athletes were highly credible sports and medical professionals, including Dr. Aina Falvey, former Irish senior rugby team physio, Des Ryan, head of athletic development at Arsenal Football Club Youth Academy, and Dr. Toby Brooks, Director of Research and Education for the International Youth Conditioning Association. The expanded research findings justified our decision to pivot and target this specific niche. In spite of the wealth of evidence available, we still needed to establish what potential users knew about this topic. One of the things that became evident with the research we gathered was it was predominantly from people who had a very strong understanding of the topic already. Additionally, our early customer development interactions were with coaches in our network who understood the topic as well. So we took a step back and asked the question, does this present a distorted view of a potential user? With that in mind, we wanted to engage with grassroots coaches and athletes. What we wanted to find out was, would Gastank provide a solution for coaches and athletes with a broad base of knowledge from poor to exceptional in their specific setting? In total, we sought the views of 139 participants. We created a short questionnaire, but we very quickly realized its ineffectiveness. Typically, experienced coaches offered more information than sought, whereas in contrast, novice coaches and athletes had an exceptionally poor understanding of the topic. As a result, we engaged with participants through various forms, primarily interviews or engagement on social media. Some interviews were conducted individually and some in a group setting, i.e. pitch or courtside for practicality purposes. A diverse variety of participants was included, ranging from professional to amateur coaches, different sports, gender, specific coaching roles, various age grades, and location. It became apparent from participant engagement that potential users fell into one of two extremes: those who had a clear understanding of overtraining and those who did not. Of the 139 participants surveyed, 91% could not provide a clear and concise explanation of overtraining, causes, symptoms, or possible preventative measures. This in fact was one of the most important findings in our research. It highlighted the fact that the prevalence of overtraining in young athletes may be due to lack of awareness and education on the topic. What this showed us was that while our value proposition is important, key activities such as training and education of potential users is critical, as there is a vast untapped market that needs to be reached. Based on the findings of the validation process, a revised as opposed to final business model canvas was constructed. As can be seen by the highlighted text, modifications were made across all 9 elements of the BMC. While all the modifications included are important, certain elements take precedence. These include key partners, key activities and resources, and the value proposition. Firstly, key partners extended to include third-level academic institutions. In order to build brand awareness and credibility, it was decided to offer a free user license for the product to a very select number of third-level educational institutions. The institutions selected all have a track record of conducting research in the area of youth physical development. In addition, a further strategic partnership is proposed with the Concussion Legacy Foundation due to their groundbreaking work in the promotion of concussion awareness and mental health issues. Key activities will focus heavily on training, education, marketing and communications. Based on the findings of the validation process, it is critical to the success of the business that potential customers understand the problems associated with overtraining in young athletes and how Gastank provides the solution. Key resources at this stage of product development will emphasize enhancing communication skills. Communication training and education are essential contributors to relaying the message of the Gastank brand, particularly to novice coaches and athletes. The value proposition has now been expanded due to the identification of 2 specific customer segments within the niche market. Moving on now to product development. The project took place over 7 3-week sprints over a total of a 21-week time frame. Each sprint played an important role in the advancement of the project. The following objectives were set and met during each sprint. Sprint 1 focused on concept ideation, including research and development, discussions surrounding the concept scope document, as well as initial business model design and hypothesis. We began customer development interactions straight away and engaged with sports coaches who we knew were familiar with the topic. Sprint 2 resumed by continuing customer development interactions. Furthermore, we focused on creating a value proposition statement, customer development plan, as well as early development of a minimum viable product. To round off the sprint, we also completed an extensive competitor analysis. During Sprint 3, we had a laser-like focus on continued customer development and in turn, adaptation of our MVP to reflect the ongoing feedback. We engaged with a diverse range of potential customers. Based on our research and feedback at this point, we made the decision to pivot and focus on the specific niche of young athletes. The 4th sprint began having completed the concept scope document. At this point, we had created wireframes, logos and branding, a proposed list of functional specification, and process flow for the customer journey. The initial business model had also been completed. Sprint 5 proved challenging in that we experienced the least amount of progress over the course of the build. Our aim was to have the first prototype complete so as to allow us to approach potential strategic partners with the aim of initiating a mutually beneficial partnership agreement. Unfortunately, due to unforeseen circumstances, this objective was pushed back. For Sprint 6, the growth hacking strategy was developed based on additional feedback we received from a large majority of our customer development interactions. A revised, as opposed to final, business model canvas was constructed and the process flow was amended to reflect this. The majority of the prototype was completed with using InVision at this point. Sprint 7 focused on full completion of the prototype. We also felt at this point that it was necessary to use aspects of our growth hacking strategy to further develop the customer validation process, as we feel strongly that this requires further research. Now that we've completed the product development process, I will hand you back to Ben.
So first I will talk to you about our logo development. When you think of great brands in the sports industry, logos like Nike's iconic swoosh and Adidas' 3 stripes immediately jump to mind. The Gastank logo encompasses elements from these giants of the industry. It attempts to use simple icons and striking colour for a visually pleasing and sophisticated brand image. I think it's something the final logo manages to achieve. For our brand identity, we wanted the logo to be the hero of any display it featured on. To achieve this, we decided to place it on a black and white shot of an athlete. These images would have to display the peak of human performance. The contrast that was created between the logo and the grayscale image not only gave us the impact we were looking for, but also gave a feeling of sophistication and credibility to the brand.
Okay, so this is our envisioned prototype build of the Gastank app. Let's begin. So what we're looking at here is the loading screen that will appear whenever someone accesses the app the first time. You'll be prompted to sign in, or if you don't already have an account, you can press the sign up button and that will bring you to this page here. Once you've input your information, you can submit and that'll bring you to your profile page. You can customize the header, your profile picture, and some other information about yourself. In the profile area, on your landing page, you will be given recent activity feeds along here, a quick view section to look at current teams, coaches, or players. There's menu navigation in the top and a search bar. Team sections views your teams. If you have more than one, you can select them, or you have the capability to add a new team. Same goes for coaches. In the current team you've selected, coaches are displayed here, and you can also add a new coach. Players lists for whatever team you are looking at. Obviously we're using Leinster as an example here. You can see the current players, and by clicking on the players you can see their profiles, which have their recent activity, such as their readiness to train, graphs, things that they've completed on the app in the last while, and other things that they've interacted with. Okay, let's go to statistics.
Okay, so this is the landing page for the statistics section. So this area here will be for a video showing what readiness to train is and what Gastank is. So first of all, we'll ask every player to fill out a pre-screen health questionnaire. This is just generic questions that you would typically see before taking any kind of strenuous activity. So we collect an injury history as well to see if there's anything in particular that a player might want to put in. And then at the end of it, it's just a disclaimer so that if they have answered yes to one or more of the questions, that they should consult a doctor before participating in the training activity or game. And then an emergency contact is collected as well, and all that's kept on file. Right, so once they submit, we will ask them to continue on to a wellness evaluation. And this is what they will be filling out before taking part in an activity or game. So a wellness evaluation section has all the players that are currently at the training session at the time. Players whose names have white names have not yet completed the wellness questionnaire, and players with orange names have already completed it, so are cleared to train. So let's have a look at someone who hasn't. Okay, so Jamie Heaslip hasn't had one yet, so let's continue with him. And it brings us to the wellness evaluation itself. So what this is sliders over particular psychological and emotional parameters. So let's take fatigue for instance. 3 is a normal setting for fatigue, but if they were to select 1 for instance, it might be something equivalent to insomnia, or 5 would be extremely well rested. And this continues down the line. So what all these are doing are basically collecting a cumulative score for us to look at later on. So let's submit this. Okay, so once everybody has completed their wellness evaluation and all the names on this list are orange, the coach has the opportunity to submit the evaluation. Once they submit the evaluation, it'll bring them to this page here, and they can look at that data on the coach's dashboard, which will actually give them the cumulative data and recommendations. But we're not ready for that just yet. Let's have a look at SRPE. So session rate of perceived exertion is what will be taken after the training session is done. So once again, names listed in white are players who have not completed this evaluation, and in orange are players that have. Let's look at Jamie Heaslip again. So this is the screen that the player will see when they are submitting this evaluation. All they have to do is basically rate the activity that they just completed from a scale of 0 to 10 and just press submit. And that will be translated into data that we can look at later on in the dashboard. Okay, so now we're in the coach's dashboard. What we're looking at here is basically the cumulative data of all the players that we have on the team at the moment. It gives us the information that we need about whether or not they have been activated, as in added to the team. Have they completed their pre-screen health questionnaire? Yes or no, it comes along here. You can check their wellness evaluation scores here and their SRPE scores here. So let's for instance check out wellness. So once again, every player is listed, and also now the scores are listed from the sliders. So this is translating the slider information into scores that we can see here. These scores directly translate into a recommendation for what way that player should be trained. So Jamie Heaslip again, for instance, has rated 25. So the recommendation is that you try a high intensity workout with reduced volume. Let's have a look at his timeline to see how this translates graphically. So what we're looking at is a line graph of the last week of evaluations that Jamie Heaslip has participated in. So all the scores are listed down the bottom, with his current score being highlighted down here. Once again, recommendations in the top right hand side and current scores up here again. So let's have a look at distribution chart. So what this is basically a percentage of all of the recommendations that he's been given in the month of February, and we can change this here to whatever month we want. Right, let's have a look at SRPE. So the SRPE has actually been translated now into a training load graph for us to look at. So what this is basically lists all the days in the week that he has participated, the sessions that he's participated in, and then the duration of them settings. His SRPE score, which as you remember is rated from 0 to 10, is multiplied by the duration to give a session training load. These session training loads are added together for a particular day to give us the daily training load. And we can see his average is listed up the top here, and his current training load is up here, so he's actually under his average at the minute. What's interesting as well is that it accumulates it into a total training load down the bottom, and we can actually rate this compared to a previous week. So he is up 8% in training load since last week, which also could be considered to be interesting. So that now completes the main components of our project. I will now hand you back to Greg to conclude our presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. So that concludes the Gastank team presentation. So to summarise, Gastank is a software as a service product with an accompanying app that allows youth sports coaches avoid the repercussions associated with overtraining in young athletes. It provides features that helps individualise practice and game demands and puts the very specific needs of young athletes first. We really do appreciate your interest in our product, and we do invite you to engage with members of the Gastank team in the form of any questions you may have, and we've provided our contact details at the end of this presentation should you wish to do so. So once again, thank you very much for your time, and we look forward to further discussions in relation to Gastank, the Athletic Performance Monitor.